Good. I was going to say good evening, but hello, because I think there's people from all over the world. So let me just say maybe Sanbonani from Southern Africa, and welcome again, Loretta Ferrucci.
Thank you so much.
And to everybody who's live tonight with us, it's such an honor to be doing this with you once again, Loretta, because it was so amazingly incredible, your first interview, and we got such positive feedback. So we were going to do a series on COVID and COVID Chronicles, but you did a post recently and I couldn't help getting my teeth into it and asking you to speak about it because it so spoke to my journey and the journey of so many human beings. So excuse my glasses, everybody, but I just need to also explain Loretta and I live in South Africa and we have load shedding at the moment. And load shedding is when we have scheduled power cuts for hours at a time. So we have no lights, no electricity. So I'm working off an inverter and a solar light. So please forgive any bad lighting problems or internet issues. And also just to say, please, if you have questions or comments, we're going to get into some really meaty stuff tonight. So please, Loretta is a very highly accomplished, trained, experienced person on many levels. So I'm going to read out her bio in a minute because last time I did her no credit by not doing that. That's why I have my glasses on.
I must be quite honest, the bio makes me cringe a little bit, so I didn't mind that so much. But go ahead, I will try and stay zen like while you read the bio.
But every single bit of it's true. And so if you have questions, please, this is an opportunity to get a very experienced expert to answer a lot of amazing questions. So we'll, about 20 minutes before the end, we'll have a look at the questions and any comments, okay? So let me kick off by telling you who Loretta is, for those who don't know, besides ravishingly beautiful, even when she's got no proper lighting. So Loretta Ferrucci is a registered homeopath. She's been in private practice for 24 years. She recently closed this practice to focus on opening a homeopathic community clinic in East London, which is just incredible contribution to humanity, Loretta. Loretta also serves on the board of directors of the Kula Natural Health Centre. And this is a community initiative that aims to start community clinics throughout rural South Africa, treating patients with homeopathic remedies. That is just, it makes my whole heart sing and expand. Thank you. But over and above this, as if it's not enough, Loretta has a health and wellness coaching company now. That's her focus. It's called Your Ideal Body. She teaches individuals and groups to practice tools and techniques to obtain optimum health and high vitality so that they can live a purposeful, meaningful, and inspiring life. Her coaching methods focus on lifestyle modification, mind-body techniques, energy medicine, and facilitating physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual health. She serves on the ExCo of the Homeopathic Association of South Africa and is currently the chairperson of the Professional Board for Homeopathy. Oh, phytotherapy and naturotherapy. Wow, I am so honored to
I'm not a phytotherapist or a naturopath. It's just we're all together on the same board and I happen to be the chairperson.
I mean, the incredible thing, Loretta, about you is you bring a combination of things that many healers don't. You have the you're a homeopath, but you're very trained in energy medicine, in Jin. How do you say it?
Jin Shin Jitsu.
Jin Shin Jitsu, and the pin code. And you're also very into spiritual stuff, mind-body connections, and you're trained in all of this and experience. So you bring an incredible array of stuff with you. So we're very honored to have you here. And I said I wouldn't talk so much. Anyway, here I am again. Let me just quickly, in 2 sentences, try and summarize the post Loretta did that got me so excited to get into the meat of this. Loretta said, "Are you treating your body like a dump site?" And I was like, wow, that's quite rough. But then I carried on reading and I was like, sure, it's so true. So many of us live from here up. We live in our heads. And I've been like that most of my life till I got really sick. And it's something I still have to manage, is to not see my body as what you call a meat suit, as something that houses our brains and our minds. And I know that intellectually, but to drop down into that space and live it is not always easy. And that's why we're so blessed to have here to offer us tools and techniques and talk about your free course at the end. Because the body, not only does it house our soul and our God selves, but it is our GPS. Am I right? Our bodies and our emotions are a GPS that tell us when we're out of alignment. And I had to get cancer to realize that what is wrong here. Meanwhile, I'd already had thyroid disease, autoimmune disease, arthritis, but I had to get a very big illness to go, okay, there's something's wrong here. And there was a lot wrong. So I'm not going to talk too much except to say Loretta raised the issue that the GPS tells us what's wrong, and many of us know that. I knew that when I got sick, but the point you raised that really intrigued me is I didn't know what to do about it then. It's like, so we know this is a GPS, our body. So I'm sore, I'm in pain, my hip's not okay, the body mind stuff, it's telling me something. But then you had the most beautiful way of saying we don't understand the language of this GPS. So we need somebody to interpret it for us. Mm-hmm. And that's you. So I think with that, I'm going to hand over to you and give you the floor.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And it's so lovely to be here. When I wrote the post about are you treating your body like a landfill, it was really it was a reflection on the whole COVID thing. It was when I was writing the COVID Chronicles, and it was more or less about how we can be so concerned about what's happening in the world. So we're so concerned about this virus, or we're so concerned about the environment, the landfill metaphor, but and we don't know what we can do, because when we're faced with something that's global, it's like, well, what can I do? Well, the point I was trying to make there is what you can do is you can look at where are you mirroring that thing that's happening outside of you, because we are a microcosmic reflection of what's happening in the macrocosm. And so I single-handedly cannot save the world or the planet. But if I look at where am I doing that which I'm judging out there as being the wrong thing, where am I? What's my equivalent of littering? What's my equivalent of not recycling? What's my equivalent of not decluttering, right? And so that's really where the landfill sort of metaphor came in. And what made me also sort of go there was because, and I've had this, I'm going to have to say, I have a lot of what we call earth numbers in my life map, right? So life map is a numerological tool, and I have 4 8s, and that's very much associated with the earth element. So it's logical, it's practical, it's like not airy-fairy. That's why it's got to make sense, and it's got to be practical. You've got to be able to do something with it. And so because of that, and because it's such a close association with the body, during my time of learning and studying energy medicine and the mind body, and I was always looking for a way to overcome the body, because I sort of took it on from a spiritual point of view that the body is just this, the body's like houses the ego. The ego is the thing that's tripping you up. The body's this thing to be overcome. But what I've realized is that we want to transcend the body and the mind and the emotions on a spiritual level, possibly, if enlightenment is what we're after. Not that I'm saying we're all after it, but certainly joy and fulfillment and happiness, right? Which means that you want to transcend it. It doesn't mean you want to overcome it. So what has happened, I found in my practice, is that people were very concerned about their spiritual lives, or they were really happy to talk about their emotional problems, but then they were neglecting the body. And in fact, they weren't just neglecting it. they were almost punishing it and literally treating it like a landfill. And part of that is because, I think we're immortal. The younger we are, the more immortal we think we are. So we don't actually think we're going to die. So we treat it just like we treat the earth, as if it's going to last forever, as if the resources are infinite. We tend to do that with our physical bodies too. And as much as our minds and our energy affect our physical body, so the stability of the physical body will affect the stability of our mind and our emotions. And so that really got me thinking let me just go back a little bit. So when I first started as a homeopath, which is in 1995, I was 24 years old. And I was terrified because there were sick people and I was supposed to now know how to do something. So yes, I'd been to university for 6 years, but when you come out of university, what do you really know? And so that's when I was learning all these other things, So I did acupuncture and energy medicine and Reiki and kinesiology and all these things because I was always looking for that magic bullet. I was like, if I had enough tools, then maybe when someone came, then I'd like have more at my disposal in terms of what I could actually do to help them. And the more I got into the energy medicine and to the mind-body thing, I actually started getting quite relief. So in the beginning it was, what is the magic supplement or the magic diet or the magic natural remedy that's going to cure this? Okay, so then I discovered there is none. There isn't a magic bullet. There isn't one size that fits all. You're not going to find one. And then when I discovered sort of energy medicine, I was like, okay, well, now if we just worked on the energy, then we don't have to worry about anything else, which is not untrue, except that if you're trying to go from energetic all the way down to physical, you've got to do a lot of work and you've got to be very dedicated. You're going to be very patient because you're probably not going to see changes happening really quickly. And then I got into the whole mind thing and I was like, oh, thank goodness I can let this whole body thing go. I'm never going to have to tell anyone about gluten again for the rest of my life. I'm never going to have to explain about chemicals. I'm never going to have to deal with food intolerances because by that stage I've been in practice for a while. I was really quite bored saying the same thing over and over. At times it sort of felt like bashing my head against the wall. And I was like, okay, well now all we do is we equilibrate the mind and then the physiology is going to come to the party. Possible, but in my naivety, I realized how hard that is because then my logic kicked in. It was like, Loretta, if you struggle to regulate what you're eating, how much more are you going to struggle to regulate what you're thinking? Because your physical body can't lie, right? Because it's your meat suit, that's my daughter's term for it, your meat suit essentially is always in the present. It's never in the past. It's never in the future. It's only here now. And whatever's going on with it now is in the now. And if you have and I don't want to say control or mastery because it sounds like, you want to have power over it. But if you have no understanding of how to manage this physical package, when it can't lie, because it actually can't lie, right? Because it is what it is. But your mind, how tricky is your mind, right? It's such a trickster. It's so slippery. So it's like if your body is carbon, the element carbon, it's like a lump of coal, then your mind would be something like mercury, It's fluid. It can slip in and out. The mind is a trickster. So if you've got no understanding of what this is trying to say, how on earth are you going to be regulating that mercury? You can't manage a lump of coal. What are you going to do with, like a handful of mercury? And so, again, I'm not suggesting that the body's better. I'm just suggesting that the body is here. It's yours. It's not going anywhere. It cannot lie. And that's when I started learning from other teachers, much cleverer than I am, that actually it's a feedback mechanism. So one of my favorite teachers was Dr. John DeMartini, and he said there are 4 feedback mechanisms in the universe. He calls it the grand organized design, the universe, G-O-D. And God, he says, stands for the grand organized designer. All right. So it's a neutral term. It doesn't offend anyone and we can all relate to it. But basically, he said the grand organized designer built in these 4 methods of feedback to help to get us back to who we really are, in alignment with who we really are. And the first one is your physiology. So what happens is you start developing signs and symptoms, let's say in your physiology, and you know how we are, we ignore it, we carry on, we run through the pain of our sore foot, or we take headache tablets because we have a headache every day without actually trying to find out what it is that's going on, really. We sort of stick a Band-Aid on it and we carry on. And please don't think that I'm not guilty of this. I know this stuff, right? And sometimes it's got to be screaming before I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I should just start listening to it. Because, of course, my mind tells me, I know this stuff. So I'm not getting that much feedback, which is a complete lot of nonsense, right? So the first is your physiology. And when you ignore your physiology, then your psychology starts feeding back to you. And we all know that when we say, you know, you got a diagnosis of cancer. When you get a diagnosis like that, your psychology is like, oh my God, I'm potentially going to die, all right? Or some sort of version of that. So your psychology is another feedback. Now, if you ignore your psychology and you just suppress it and you put on your big girl pants and you soldier on, then your sociology, your friends and family and loved ones are going to start noticing that things are up with you, and they're going to start giving you feedback. And if you ignore all three of those, I don't know, can I swear? Shit happens. That's the fourth one, okay? That's when the universe steps in and the feedback starts becoming a little bit more cosmic, okay? So thinking about this, I was like, okay, well, you know how difficult it is to listen to other people often, right? So, because basically we think we know more, we know better for ourselves, right? So your sociology is hard to listen to. Your psychology is hard to even notice because of that tricksiness of your mind. But your physiology, you can't get away from your body. And so that's when I sort of realized that the body speaks the language, I say, of your soul, literally. It's a language. And I'm by no means 100% fluent in it. But I have a rudimentary understanding of what it's trying to say because I've dedicated my whole career to finding it out, right? Trying to fix things. So when we can understand what it's trying to say, it's only when we can understand the message and we can accept the message that we can start making the changes that are required for us to transcend it. So another way for us to think about this is that energy, your energy is dependent on how much friction you have in your life. So now I'm talking about like your physical, like how much energy do you have to do what you need to do? And not just that, how much energy do you have for joy? How much energy do you have for accepting and giving pleasure? How much energy do you have for kindness? How much energy do you have for knowing that you have a purpose and fulfilling that purpose every day? That all requires energy, right? And so assuming that all of us, I think there's a beautiful analogy once. Carolyn Mace, who wrote Anatomy of the Spirit, which was one of the first books that I read on sort of alternative energy stuff when I was in my 20s. She said, imagine you get God gives you 100 circuits of energy every day. Every single one of us gets this 100 circuit. And those 100 circuits are supposed to power your everyday life. And you're supposed to put some of that in your energy savings account. So that when the pawpaw does strike the fan in your life, you have energy backup. But most of us deplete that energy and we don't put anything in the storage tank. So if you have a resentment against someone who did something to you 20 years ago and you're carrying around this unresolved trauma or this wound, when you wake up in the morning, even if you're not thinking about it, 20 circuits of energy, gone. The fight that you've had with your mother, 10 circuits of energy to her. Now you need circuits of energy to just digest your food, do your job, do your normal physical activities. And so what ends up happening is the friction. So I call that energy depletion, friction. So that friction is the friction in your physical body, aches and pains, and not just aches and pains, like slowing you down. This idea that because we're older, we can't, it's a mental idea. I'm not saying that when you're 50, you potentially have, let's just say, the flexibility of when you were 20. But just because you're 50 doesn't mean you have to be inflexible in body, mind, and spirit, right? And so the idea that the aging is associated with how much friction do we have and how much energy do we have. So energy minus the friction, we all get the same amount of energy every day. When you take the friction away from the energy, that's what you're left with. And that's what you're left with for productivity and joy and inspiration and whatever, however you want to measure it. And so when we ignore things, when we slap Band-Aids on them, without actually trying to find out what the message is, then we're increasing the friction. So if you spend 2 hours a day meditating so that you can improve your spiritual connection, and I have no objection to that whatsoever, but you, I don't know, you never move your physical body. You don't drink enough water, for example. And this, I'm not trying to guilt people into healthy lifestyle. These are facts. You need to eat well, mostly plants, whole food. You need to move your body frequently. You need to drink good quality water, and you need to sleep. Those are really the only 4 things you need to keep this physical body running. But when you don't do that and you've got friction in your physical body, it makes it more difficult for you to sit on your mat, your meditation mat, for an hour. Well, because your knees can't deal and your bum can't handle it and your hips don't open. And do you understand what I'm trying to say? So the friction is the thing that is trying to get our attention, because the friction is always there to try and bring us back to the truth of who we really are. And so sometimes it's difficult for us to interpret the symbols, but you know what? Actually, it's not actually such a complex language, because we have a lot of the complexities built into our speech, like this makes me sick to my stomach, or I can't stomach the thought of that, okay? Or, it sticks in my craw to have to apologize to that person. We have a lot of the language we use gives us an indicator of what's actually happening energetically. So this is one of the reasons why I love the Japanese healing art of Jinshin Jitsu, because in Jinshin Jitsu, there are 26 areas in the body called safety energy locks. And they say they like switches. They like brakes. It's like a braking system. The brakes get slammed on when things are getting out of hand. So they are in specific locations and they are numbered, and the numbers have meanings. And when you have a pain in an area, and you realize, okay, that maybe there's a safety energy lock here in my elbow, let's say, which there happens to be one, and you understand the meaning of the safety energy lock, that is the language that's associated with what is possibly trying to be fed back to you. And even if you don't understand the language entirely, if you know from Jinshin Jitsu that your hands are like jumper cables, and if you place them onto those areas, they are going to eventually restore that energy pathway. Well, then you can actually take your mind, which you can't always rely on, completely out of the equation. So that's just one way. So I've learned a lot of tricks and techniques, everything ranging from what your chakras do and what emotions they govern, to what your organs do and what emotions they govern, and what your safety energy locks do and how they go. So that for me, I have a kind of map that if I don't understand the language in this form, then maybe I can understand the language in a different form. One thing I want to tell people, though, is this is the easiest way to find out what it's trying to tell you. And honestly, it's not rocket science. So every human has a hierarchy of what's important to us. It's our values, right? And these values are ego-driven, because they're based on what we perceived was missing when we were really young. So, if, for example, you grew up really poor and the lack of money created huge stress in your family, then you may have this perception that you never want to be without money. And so you develop a value on earning your money and managing it well and making sure you have a nest egg. Okay, it's fine. So you have a value on getting and managing money. And we all have this hierarchy, and it's a hierarchy because we have the most important, and then at the bottom we have the least important. And the most important ones are always where we're prepared to pay the biggest price. So we're prepared to be disciplined, we're prepared to have long-term goals, and we're prepared to literally do what it takes in order to get that thing that we really want. That's really important to us, whether it's a family, whether it's spiritual growth, whether it's health, whether it's money, whether it's a career, it doesn't matter. And we develop our own set of values based on what's mirrored to us by our parents, but our parents also have a set of these values. And what happens with humans is when we support one another's values, then we open up and we warm up and we're very accepting. That's our friends. We choose our friends based on what we have in common, right? But our family, not so much, because we don't get that choice, which is generally why family dynamics are a little bit more contentious than friendships. Because the choice is, you essentially, you're born, you love them, but you're not really forced to understand them or like them, because because they have a different value system and you can't always relate to them. So sorry, the point I'm trying to make is that you've got your own set, and that's like the default setting of your computer. But society also tells us what we should value. And our religions tell us what. So anything that has a set of rules basically has a value hierarchy and wants you to conform to those rules. So, when you do what your parents want you to do, then they're warm and open and easy. And when you challenge the status quo, they're a little bit more challenging, right? So because we spend so much time trying to fit in, and this is an evolutionary mechanism. If we didn't fit into the tribe, we got kicked out of the tribe, and if we were on our own, then our survival chances were much slimmer. So from an evolutionary point of view, so we do want to be liked and we do want to fit in. But what happens is we inject the values of other people, and then we start thinking those are the things that we must, we ought, we should, and we need to do. So when we start using imperative language, that's not true to you. That's true for someone else and what you think you need to do to please someone else. So whenever we get sick, and this can be fairly contentious for some people as well, there is a subconscious or an unconscious agenda. It's not an agenda like a manipulative agenda. It literally is part of this feedback that's trying to get our attention. So one of the ways, okay, there was a question. I'm just gonna finish this one. So one of the ways you want to do this to find out what that agenda is to ask yourself, how does what I have right now, what does it force me to do or be or have? What is it forcing me to do, be or have? And how is that thing actually a benefit to me? Now, this is not about making a symptom positive. Please, it's not. It literally, because when you have a symptom, it's negative because you don't want it, right? I mean, nobody wants an ache or pain. So we do our best to try and get rid of it. But we can't shift it until we understand why it's there. So I'm just going to give you an example. So let's just say you get migraine headaches. I'm going to come to a question. I know you want to ask a question, right? So let's just say that you have migraines, right? So if you have migraines, and when you have a migraine headache, you go to bed for 2 days. You can't work. You can't do the homework with the kids. You can't do the groceries. You're man down. You have to take heavy medication. It knocks you out, and for the next 24 hours, you're out of action. Okay, you are like missing in action. So the question is, what does this migraine force me to do? Well, it forces me literally to lose a day. Okay, and how is that beneficial to you? Well, most people would say that's not beneficial to me at all. Okay, well, what is it forcing you to do? Well, it forces me to rest. It forces me to sleep. It forces me not to do any of the things that I'm supposed to do. Like I can't work, I can't care for my family, right? And what's the benefit of that? Well, I suppose it really forces me to like take time out, right? Interesting that. And so is it possible that you could build, so do you have a life where you never allow yourself time out, where you assume so much responsibility that you cannot rest? Because if that's true, and you could build some rest into every day or every week, maybe your body wouldn't force you to have to go to bed for 24 hours. So that's what I mean by the agenda. Now, I must also tell you that I have told just about it. Once I discovered this, I told every single patient in my office to do this. And so few people did. Or they came back and they went, there are no benefits. Or they came back and they said, I could only find 5. And I always said 50. You need 50. You actually need about 200. But 50, let's start with 50. And they'd say 5. I could only find 5. And there are no more. I'm like, okay, well, how's your pain? No, it's really bad. I really want to get rid of it. Okay, but if you could just trust me for a half a nanosecond, and if you could just try and find a few more, I can almost guarantee that your pain will improve. Okay, so the patients who did make the lists invariably got better faster, because what they did was they were able to truly be grateful for the symptoms, and not in like I know gratitude is good, so I'm just going to pretend I'm grateful. They could really be grateful because they could literally see what they were getting for the price of their symptoms. The symptoms are the price they were paying, and the benefits are what they were getting. Because you see, until you can see that, it's like when you get sick, it's like you've gone into a store, you've slapped down $10,000 and you've walked out of the store and you've got nothing. They took your money and they didn't give you anything. No service, nothing. You didn't get the Louis Vuitton handbag. You just put the money down and you walked out with nothing. So of course you're going to be resentful and angry. But if you go into the store and you really want the Louis Vuitton handbag or whatever it is, and you pay the $10,000 and you walk out with your beautiful purchase, you are in a place of neutrality and gratitude for this beautiful thing that you bought. And it's exactly the same with the body and the signs and the symptoms. So until you can see how it serves you, you cannot get to that place of surrender. And until you can do that, you can't transform it. You can't get beyond it. And that's why we stay so stuck. So sorry, you wanted to ask a question, Antoinette. You muted, by the way, so I can't hear you. Oh, there we go.
No, I muted myself because apparently I do a lot of ums and ahs and wows, and it creates it creates a sound loop. It creates a sound loop for people listening. So I'm like, because I am like a ooh ah yeah person, especially when you're speaking. So my questions changed now. I actually have an observation, Loretta, because you're 100% right. But from my own journey, I vowed I'd never talk about my own story again, but this is a very poignant insight, I think. Is until I got cancer, it was so subconscious. You're absolutely right, but the reason why people cannot come to you with 50 things or even 5 is because they don't know it, because it's subconscious. So I had to get something so extreme that it stopped me so hard in my tracks that I just had to throw out every belief system. I had to ask what was going on, and it took me a while, to be honest. It wasn't like if you'd asked me that 2 days after my cancer diagnosis, I would have gone, I don't know what you're talking about, Loretta. Yeah. But when I look back now, every single symptom I had over my life was telling me something. But when it's subconscious, and secondly, when you're so busy, because I was interested that you said one of the ways we treat our bodies as landfills, it's not just about eating hamburgers and chips and Coke, it's about overworking. For me, it was all my coping mechanisms, actually. Overworking, overachieving, control, absolutism. I was an anally healthy eater. But why did I get cancer on that? I exercised, meditated, yoga, ate healthy, as you know, everyone knows that. But I got sick because of all the suppressed stuff, the subconscious. So because it's subconscious, we don't know it. So I found it intriguing. For me, cancer, so you're right, cancer was an absolute blessing. People get angry with me when I say that, but if I hadn't got cancer, I wouldn't have woken up to what was going in internally. So it actually saved me, to be honest. It rescued me. I don't know where I would have been now without it. But I found myself again 4 years after cancer. I've got a knee thing and a hip thing and an ear thing. And I found myself, it's so interesting, as self-aware as I am, I find myself going back into that same pattern as I did in the past of just like, oh, here we go again. Antoinette's a hypochondriac. It's like, so the poor body, just because I meditate and I visualize and I exercise and the pain doesn't go away. So you need a lot of self-awareness, Loretta, to understand that. How do people, so maybe you're going to answer this question. My question now is, it's changed, but is how do people, before they get cancer and have to stop, so when you've got an ache or a pain, firstly, is it always your body telling you something's out of alignment? Are we always healthy if we're not out of alignment? Aren't we sometimes just sick because there's a virus going around? And secondly, if our bodies are telling us something and there are blessings in it, like I had to do chemo to rest. I never rested a minute in my life. Never. I was doing all the right things. I couldn't believe why I was doing chemo, and I know now why I had to do chemo. So I was so sick, I couldn't do anything, help anybody, rescue anybody, work. Sorry, I'll stop because I've opened.
There are a few very interesting things there. So I want to just address that you were doing everything right and you still got the cancer. Okay, so we're going to go into like the truth of reality creation. The truth of reality creation is that you need your unconscious limiting beliefs, your egoic nature that's trying to keep you trapped in your fear and your trauma. But you also need your soul-inspired nature that actually has a vision for what it is that you would love, like in all areas of your life. Like what kind of relationship would you love? What kind of family would you love? You can't change your family members, but what kind of relationship would you love to have with your family? That you have power over. Because you can regulate that to a large extent. What kind of job would you like? Okay, whatever. So not what kind of job can you make the most money out of, or what kind of job does your mother want you to do? Literally, what does your soul want you to do? Now, in order to do that, you need to be able to connect to your intuition, because your intuition is the bridge between your rational mind and your soul-inspired desire. So again, we are not encouraged to do that. We are not taught to do that. That doesn't happen in a syllabus at school. So when we are healthy, when we do all the healthy things because we're terrified of getting sick, our focus is on preventing sick. Our focus is not on creating health. And that may sound like it's hair splitting, but that is the crux of it. So we are always, it's like we're walking this little tightrope, and it literally is as narrow as a tightrope. And if your focus is on this side, oh my God, I don't want to get cancer, so I'm going to meditate, exercise, drink the smoothies, drink the juice, stand on my head, whatever it is I need to do, I'm going to do that, right? Where your focus creates your reality. Not how positive you are, not that you're always thinking happy thoughts, not unicorns and rainbows, not love and light, actually. It's literally your focus, because there are some people who are not self-aware, who are not into love and light, who are not into personal development, who actually have what looks like success. They manage to create success for themselves in whichever way. Okay, so I mean, we could be here for 7 hours, and that's not because they are positive people. It's also not because they are highly spiritual people. It's literally because by default or on auto, or maybe they're just so self-absorbed that they don't see any other way for themselves. They are 100% focused on what they want. And so whether you're a good person, the universe is neutral. I did a talk live on my group on karma on Wednesday, right? Which is not really my topic, but someone asked me. I thought, well, I think I know enough about it to speak about it for half an hour. And before I watched the Satguru video, just to make sure, right, that me and the guru were saying about the same thing about the karma. And because, I mean, hell, he's a guru, right? So, and he said, karma is not from God. Karma is your free will. If you think God cares about your choice, you are limiting God. That's why he gave you free will, so that you can make your own choices. So you are creating your own karma. So the universe, God, whatever we want to call that, doesn't reward us for being good, and it doesn't punish us for being bad. That's what our parents did. That's a human egocentric vision of the divine. So, so your subconscious, which creates your reality, is neutral. And if you are focusing on fixing illness or preventing illness, it's going to create whatever it needs to create in order for you to do that. And you see it nowhere else as beautiful as in the body, because we have a nervous system in our body called our autonomic nervous system, and it runs all the automatic functions of the body. Okay, so you can't decide whether you're going to ovulate this month. Your body sorts it out for you via your hormones, via your autonomic nervous system. So your autonomic nervous system runs your endocrine system, it runs your immune system, it runs your digestion, it runs everything that you don't have to think about. And your autonomic nervous system consists of two parts. Your sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight one. It's the one that keeps you alert. It's the one that is allowing us to speak. It's the one that's helping you manage the technology right now. And your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest and restore one. Now, that one sounds like the good, fun one, and the other one sounds like the mean one. They're not good or fun or mean. They're both essential, and they work together. So when you are feeding unconsciously your subconscious with, I have to make sure I don't get cancer. I hope I don't get cancer. I'm doing all the right things not to get cancer. What you're actually doing is underlying all of that. Your sympathetic nervous system is in overdrive, because it's going, oh my God, we don't want to get cancer. Because if we get cancer, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. So your sympathetic nervous system then affects, when you get sympathetic, what's the word? It's called dominance. When you're sympathetic dominance, you start producing more cortisol. You have higher levels of inflammation. Inflammation can predispose you to cancer, for example, or heart disease or diabetes. I mean, I just mentioned cancer because that's what you had. So your subconscious runs your autonomic nervous system. And so the first place it's going to show where your focus is going to show up in your life literally is going to be in your body. Long before maybe your psychology and everything else. And sometimes it all happens in one go. So my mission, really, my wish, it's not even my mission, because I mean, who am I to think that I can do this? My wish for everyone is that we don't have to, you're quite right. So the second thing you said was, it's not easy to tell someone who's like a week after they've been diagnosed with cancer, okay, well, I need you to find the blessings in this, because if you find the blessings in this, you'll probably heal from this. But if you don't, sorry, but your sympathetic nervous system is going to take you out. I mean, that's hard. But if you've practiced it with the ache you had in your heel and the stiffness you have in your shoulders, and the fact that, you've got an eye that's jumpy eyelid, or, I mean, those are all minor, or that you get headaches once a month when you menstruate, or that you have menstrual pain. Now, I'm not making those seem insignificant. I know that they can be awful when they happen to us. Or when you get flu, you got to start practicing on the little things, being able to find 200 benefits to cancer. That's like being able to run a marathon. You can't run a marathon if you've never put your walking shoes on and walked 5Ks. So my wish for people is that we learn to do this, or at least learn the rudiments of this, or at least learn that this is how it works before we get sick. Because when you get ill, you go to a doctor, right? When your washing machine breaks, you get a washing machine person to come and fix it. When your drain blocks, you get a plumber. You don't think, oh, don't worry, I can plumb my own house. Why on earth, when things start going wrong in your life or your physiology, do we all think, I've got this? The reason why we all think I've got this is because we've got some sort of underlying beliefs that if you don't have it, you're probably not viable. You're going to be rejected. They're not going to love you. And actually you're going to die. So at least if you know that this is a possibility, then you can find someone who can guide you. And like you would get a trainer. If I was going to run a marathon, I know nothing about running. I have no idea how anyone could run 42 kilometers. I don't even know how that's possible. But I'm sure that if I got a trainer who understood running and said to me, Loretta, in 1 year, I can get you to run 42 kilometers, I trust that that trainer will be able to get me there. And so that's the second part of the problem, is that we have these things, but we expect that we should just be able to sort them all out ourselves. I can't fix my own washing machine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that getting the right help is something I would absolutely advocate. Someone that can shine a light on the things you can't see. Anyone who looked at my video that I did on the Trauma to Triumph Summit, one thing I'll say, as aware as I was, as conscious as I was, as well-read as I was, there were things I didn't know, Loretta. So in my subconscious program was not neutral. By the age of 7, I think, I don't know, maybe we're using different terms, but the subconscious is in place from your upbringing or your socialization. So my subconscious was playing out a whole lot of stuff like, you're not good enough, life's not safe, you have to work hard, you have to control everything. I wasn't even scared of getting cancer. I honestly thought I wasn't a candidate for it. Ha ha. But when I got a book on psychoneuroimmunology, I knew why I was a candidate, because my absolutism, my suppressed emotions, my control, my analness, my people pleasing, my codependency, my self-hatred, which I didn't even know was there, my resentment and bitterness and anger that was so suppressed, I never knew it, that was affecting the hormones and the nervous system.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why I got sick, but I didn't know what I didn't know. So that's where we need help. I think we need a good coach.
Absolutely. And so sometimes we don't always need a coach. Sometimes we just need to know that we don't, what I'm saying is, we don't all need a coach right now, right? But so for example, if I get sick, like really sick, I'm going to try and coach myself. Because when you are the one in the, sometimes my clients say, it's so clear when you say it. I say, yeah, well, because literally, I mean, it's a hectic metaphor, but you're swimming in the sewer and I'm standing outside the sewer. So it's messy and stinky, but I can see what you need to do to get out of it, because it's not my sewer, guys. I'm not in it. You're in it. But when I'm in my own, so I might, I'd love to think that I have some awareness, but, I'm also not completely naive. I know that every single one of those primal fears, my limiting beliefs and my programming is going to kick in, and I'm probably not going to be able to get myself out of it on my own. In fact, I'm definitely not going to be able to get myself out of it on my own. But I do know that I know enough to know that I need help, and actually where I need to go for that help. That's the security, and I think that's really all we really need to do, is to know where we need to go. It's like, if I want to run a marathon, I have a friend who I know, if I ask that friend to put me in the direction of a trainer, that person will. I don't even have to know who the trainer is. I just have to know someone who knows a trainer. You're only 6 people away from everyone in the whole world. That is apparently a stat that they bandy about in networking circles, is that because specifically with social media, literally you are 6 connections away from anyone in the world. So just ask.
Yeah. Do you know it's 7:45? How did it happen? Oh my word.
I'm a
Yes,
babbler.
I think that a lot of us who don't listen to our bodies and they get really sick, we don't ask for help. Actually, we try and do everything ourselves. And without a good coach, without some guidance, I would never be where I am today.
Yeah.
So, but we have to be discerning about who we choose.
Yep.
So that's also about the people I interview on these lives are people, we've got to be discerning. You can't just go out there and get anybody, because you can waste a lot of time and money. So can we have a look at the comments and
Sure.
see? I just want to see. Okay, they're only comments, really, no questions or anything. So I think we'll address those tomorrow online. Could you tell us, Loretta? Okay, so we've highlighted the fact that we need help and we need to get solutions to get our GPS to work well. What is the solution?
Well, look, I can only tell you the solution from my point of view. So I'm sure there are a number of solutions, right? But the one, so as I said to you before, I think we can use the body as a tool. And so one of my primary areas of interest is, why is it that if we know that health is relatively simple, eat whole food, mostly plants, drink the water, move and sleep, why is it so difficult for us to do? Well, the reason why it's so difficult to do is because we've got so much friction caused by our programming that is getting in the way. So one of the ways is that, and we don't know ourselves. We actually don't know ourselves. We think we know ourselves, but we actually don't, right? And so food is the thing that we have to take for sustenance every day. So the one thing that I have learned is there's no one size fits all. And quite frankly, there's a unique diet out there for everyone. So if we're just going to talk about food, and if we can learn to use our intuition and remove enough of the friction, we could actually design our own diet. Perfect for us. So there would be the Loretta diet for Loretta, the Antoinette diet for Antoinette, the Pierre diet for Pierre, and the Gia diet for Gia, and for every other person, all right? Which means that you become the authority, but you can only become the authority in your life, I believe, to the degree to which you know what's actually going on. So, the work that I do is I go, okay, well, let's not put you on restrictive diets. Let's not do that, because we know that doesn't really work, all right? Let's clean it up if we need to. In the short term, you've got to clean it, because you've got to declutter. You've got to uncover what is causing the friction. So uncover those limiting beliefs so people can see what is unconsciously running them, right? And then once you've done that decluttering, then go to, like, what is hunger? This is how I do it. What does hunger really mean to you? And the only way you would know that is if we really took the food away. Now, that sounds harsh, right? But I'm talking about a truly nourishing therapeutic fast that is nourishing on many other levels, but without the food, because that's when you become aware of how much emotion do you suppress, how terrified are you of running out of food, how often do you use food to soothe an emotional pain, rather than actually feeding your physical hunger. And please, I love food and it's delicious. I don't like food that tastes bad. So I don't care how healthy it is. If it doesn't taste nice, I'm not really that keen. So I'm not an advocate of, well, you only need to eat in order to power yourself. Not at all. There's all sorts of pleasure associated with food and sociability and all the rest. But by and large, food is our first sort of tether, other than air and water. We can't take the air away, and I don't think it's worth taking the water away, quite frankly. So food is associated with the earth element, and our body is associated with the earth element, and there's an intimate relationship between us and food, because our first relationship with our mother is feeding. So, when they take that baby and they put it on the breast, that's the first thing it does. The first thing it does is it suckles to get some sort of nourishment. So when we can declutter that, we can actually learn so much about ourselves in a relatively short period of time. And once we know that, once we understand what that friction is, it's at that point that we can start using our intuition to design our own diet. And your intuition relies on things like, is it heart hunger, emotional, or is it stomach hunger? If it's emotional hunger, we can't have food. If it's stomach hunger, by all means, we can eat. And then, what would you love to eat? What is going to nourish you optimally right now? Now, for a lot of people in the beginning, they'll go, oh my God, I'd eat donuts every day if you gave me that option, because you see, we don't trust ourselves. But if you were truly connected to nourishing this vessel, then in the beginning, you wouldn't always make what we would call a healthy choice, but that doesn't matter. Forget about healthy and unhealthy. It's what is the most nourishing choice for you right now to assuage your physical hunger? And then it's, do you take the time to eat? Do you have reverence for the food? What do you think about when you're preparing the food? Do you think about where the food even comes from? How far has it had to travel? How old is it? How fresh is it? Little things like that. The water, where does it come from? How do you store it? So these are little things that are not hugely time consuming that help us to activate our intuition, but we can't do that when we've got all this mental and emotional and physical clutter. So when I work with people, we start decluttering the mind. We start exploring the emotions, because if you tell them at the beginning, we got to take all your favorite foods away, they all go, I'm not doing this, too hard, okay? Because we don't want to do that, because we don't want to make it punishing. No one ever punished themselves to health. No one. So if you drink green juice because you're punishing yourself for the chocolate you ate yesterday, that green juice is going to do something different in your body than if you have green juice because you are happy to imbibe this beautiful gift from the earth that you've prepared or someone else has prepared for you, and you're going to drink it. It's the same green juice. It's got the same vitamins, minerals, antioxidants in it. It will behave differently in your body. And so that's what I try and make people aware of, because that also gets you off the diet trap. It gets you out of the you should, you must, you ought to. It gets you out of this, well, it needs to be keto and high fats, or no, it needs to be plant-based. Oh my God, it needs to be raw. No, it has to be raw plants. And God forbid you should eat anything cooked or what. All of those rules, Satguru has a thing that he teaches in inner engineering that says, all the rules in the universe are my rules. That literally, I interpret that as, well, that's your free will. I mean, all the rules are your rules. You don't have to actually stick to, okay, other than not like can't go and commit a crime, all right? But they're my rules. So if you tell me I have to have a plant-based diet, why would I have to accept that from you? And I'm not knocking anyone who does it. I did that for years, not plant-based diets necessarily, but I prescribe diets for people, and it works for a period of time. But what I didn't do was, once they were getting better and their body had stabilized, I didn't teach them how to then take that and make it their own by intuitively nourishing themselves to wellness. So one of the things I often tell my clients is just ask yourself, as you're about to eat that, is it nourishing or punishing? Because it can sometimes be punishing. What we call comfort food can be because we feel bad about ourselves, so we feed ourselves more chocolate so that we can then feel guilty about all the sugar we just ate, so that we can just hate ourselves more, because actually we're already revolting, so we might as well get more revolting. So, you're just heaping one pain and punishment on top of the next, whereas if you really, really want that block of chocolate or the 2 blocks of whatever it is after dinner or that dessert, and you eat it consciously and it's delicious and you just love it, no story, it's going to do something different in your body than if you're feeling guilty with every bite. So I don't know if that answered your question. Sorry. I hope it did.
Larissa, there's a question here from Nolene. Do you think it's the way we have been brought up not to give in to ourselves?
If I understand the question correctly, then it's not how we've been brought. So you know, Antoinette, you said by the time you're 7, right? So one of the teachers that I had said that your initial compensatory, your coping mechanisms to trauma develop in the first 3 years of your life, actually, before your ego is even fully formed. So, so if you've got a limiting belief that you're not worthy, why would it would be more difficult for you to take the time to prepare your own food. You wouldn't be prepared to spend enough money on the really good food, so you'd probably buy cheaper. Do you understand? You'd have all these rational reasons why it wasn't okay. But actually, if you thought you were not worthy, you'll find that you punish yourself in many areas of your life. So you probably punish yourself with food too. So some people can punish themselves with super healthy food, and some people can punish themselves with super unhealthy food. Some people punish by overeating. Some people punish by starving. Some people punish by too much exercise. So yes, it's not necessarily the way you've been brought up, Nolene. It's your perception of what the way in which the dynamics were in the caregivers that you had taught you how the world is, how you are, how they are, and how the world is. And if one of those things that you got was I'm not worthy, which is the most common limiting belief out there, then you will always put yourself last, which means that you will not necessarily feed yourself well or get the help you need or rest when you're tired.
Yeah, and I think eating can be a distraction too, actually.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm the queen of distracting myself with food because then I don't have to, because this is the other thing. We've never really been taught to honor our emotions. So, you know, when we're little, and anyone who's had children or even been with little children, when little children cry, adults get uncomfortable. So even when adults cry, you know, if I was sitting with you, and this probably wouldn't happen with you, Antoinette, but, you know, if I was like started crying, even here, if I really started crying here, there's a lot of people who'd be uncomfortable with that, right? Because our instinct is to want to soothe that. So when we're really little, when we have a negative emotion, an adult either tries to cajole us out of it or soothe us out of it or comfort us out of it. And what we sometimes learn is that this is not acceptable. It's not an okay way to be, because when I'm sad, it makes my mother sad. So then you learn that sad is not okay. So then you don't do sad. So now sad goes and sits in your physiology. And the world pats you on the back because you're such a coper. You're so tough, you know. Meanwhile, inside, you've got decades of sad that have built up, and your emotions get trapped in your physiology. When you have a perception, something comes in through your senses, you have a thought about that thing, you then have an emotion, and it releases, the thought releases neurotransmitters, and the emotion releases another cascade of neurotransmitters. That's psychoneuroimmunology, right? And those neurotransmitters go to your entire, every cell of your body gets that emotional impression. And emotions are like waves. They want to be felt. They want to come in, they want to peak, they want to break, and they want to recede. But if you learn that they're not appropriate, you don't allow them to break. So you never allow them to feel, you never allow yourself to feel them fully. And they sit literally in your physiology.
So, you know, Loretta, I mean, I'm not very schooled on psychoneuroimmunology, but I've read a couple of things, and they say that things like cancer, autoimmune disease, diabetes, heart disease, it might take 20 years, but at some point, if you're living a lifestyle, so yes, I was exercising and eating right, but nothing was right really, because my internal stuff was not right. My coping mechanisms were covering up my self-hatred and insecurity and low self-esteem and all of that. Yeah. And those are the things we can't see. And so those suppressed emotions and the coping mechanisms that go with them, or the anxiety, the low-level anxiety, I still struggle with to this day. The high-level anxiety, the stress, and I don't just mean work stress. It's like
Life stress.
That creates, but when you've got a certain mind state like I had, the life stress becomes so huge because everything actually stresses you, but you don't know it because you're on the go so much doing things or exercising or whatever you're doing, whether it's juicing or exercising or so. Such a fascinating thing, this, because if human beings, we should be taught this in school, honestly,
that is exactly it.
We're allowed to. So I think what you're saying is healing is a multifaceted thing. So I went on these absolute tangents which didn't serve me. I was doing all the right food and yoga and meditation, but I wasn't sorting out my internal space. I wasn't sorting out. Yeah.
Sorry. So sometimes we use those things as, that's why I'm saying the mind is a trickster, because, you know, we use spirituality to bypass. We use work to bypass. We use the trappings of success, the house, the car, the money. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. But if you're using them unconsciously to bypass your inner turmoil, it's going to eventually show up in your physical body. Of that, look, there's a lot of stuff I'm not sure about.